Welcome back to Kerbal Space Program. In our last episode we completed, or should I say started, our mission to Eve, and today we are continuing it, starting with doing our science in the orbit and doing the aerobraking maneuver to make sure that we end up in a nice circular orbit and can go to Gilly. So, let us begin. First thing, we dropped our periapsis a little bit lower, but it's still not low enough, so we have to do it again. Let's drop our periapsis a little bit more on our next orbit, I guess. And it will allow us to aerobrake by dropping our apoapsis lower and lower and lower until we finally hit the nice circular orbit of maybe 120 kilometers. Something like that would be perfect. The process will take us a couple of orbits to complete, so I'm going to cut this whole thing out and I will see you when we are in the orbit, the proper orbit around the planet Eve. See you in a bit. And here we are again. Our orbit is almost done. This is our last circularization orbit, so to say. This one actually had me a little bit worried that we are already below the certain point where we are going to drop on the surface, but it all worked out pretty well. Our apoapsis is still falling. 125, 121, and it almost stopped falling. 115 kilometers. Perfect. Now let's just do a little circularization burn. By doing this, we've saved a lot of delta V, which we would have spent otherwise on apoapsis change. And done. Awesome. Now, let's set the Gilly as our target. And my first idea was to just burn directly to it at the descending node. But it doesn't work, so we're going to change our inclination to make sure it matches the one of Gilly. And at first I didn't realize that it will take that much delta V. But what can we do? So let's create a maneuver, time warp to it, and execute it. The burn will take us approximately 4 minutes, but we're going to time warp through it and also edit it to make sure that it doesn't take more than a couple of seconds. And we are almost there. And done. Now, what we have to do is to catch Gilly. At first I thought that I'll just use the similar maneuver to the one we used to get to Minmus on Moon. But it is not that easy with Gilly, because its gravity is so low. You have to be very, very precise when approaching it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise my apoapsis to approximately Gilly's orbit, and then I'll just orbit for a couple times, and at some point I am going to encounter it. It is just inevitable. So here we are, raising our apoapsis, again by using magical video editing and magical time warp. At this point we burned through our second stage, which was originally conceived as interplanetary stage, but was used only in the orbit of another planet. And look, after some orbits, we got an encounter. So let's try to tweak it a little bit. And it's not that easy, because game doesn't want us to put a maneuver node. So we have to eyeball it. And this is the closest approach I can get. Any kind of burn just removes the encounter. And you can even see that when time warping, encounter sometimes just disappears, and we don't want it. So final possibility to tweak the encounter, and it doesn't work. So we'll have to work with what we have. Not really the perfect situation. And we are almost there. So let's try to circularize, but no. We'll have to drop approximately 1.3 thousand delta V, and it will leave us without the fuel, so and this was me waiting for the Kerbal transfer window. And then this happened. We got ejected from the Eve orbit by the mystical Kraken. And now we are in the orbit around the Sun. So let's use it, because we still can go home. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to change our inclination to make sure that it is matches the inclination of Kerbal. Just like that. It's a fairly big burn, whole 650 meters per second, but we can still afford it. And now we're going to do exactly the same thing which we done when we were capturing Gilly. We're going to raise our apoapsis to the Kerbal orbit, and then we're going to do a couple of orbits around the Sun until we get the close encounter. So I'll continue orbiting the Sun, and I'll see you when we are ready to encounter Kerbal. And here we are. At first, I tried to capture Kerbal using the radial and anti-radial maneuver, but it just takes too much delta V. And then I realized, wait, I can just burn prograde. It saves a lot of delta V and allows us to get into this nice capture, which will bring us home. Isn't it great? So our maneuver is ready. Let's just time warp to it and execute it. And we still have 800 meters delta V, which we will definitely use during our approach to tweak our encounter and make sure that we end up in the Kerbal's atmosphere to perform error capture, error braking, and eventually landing. Let's time warp to the Kerbal sphere of influence. And use our last maneuver somewhere here to tweak our final approach and put our periapsis lower than 30 kilometers. That probably should do it. Perfectly done. Now all we have to do is time warp, disconnect our transfer stage and burn in the atmosphere. Thankfully, we don't use any kind of deadly re-enter mode, so we can enter the atmosphere at blazing 4 kilometers a second and not disintegrate. Along the way we also picked up some science. Although it's a very small amount, it's still something. Our parachutes are deployed perfectly fine. And splashdown. Let's take our last science and recover the vessel. Here we are. 820 science from this mission. Sounds good. And at this point, I have to say, thank you all for watching. Remember to like, dislike and comment this video in the section below. My name is Darlock. In our next episode we are going to probably land on another planet. Again, thank you all for watching. Goodbye.